This is an Al Jazeera investigation which found some whistleblowers inside mainly CNN and BBC and talking about the pro-Israel bias in Western media. Now, you and I both know that these channels are incredibly biased for Israel, but also for war, for the U.S. empire, etc. But rarely do we see the people inside of it admit that they've been part of this, that they've been part of this bias, this scam that is mainstream media. 10 journalists who have covered the war on Gaza for two of the world's leading news networks, CNN and BBC. So this is 10 journalists have revealed the inner workings of those outlets' newsrooms from October 7th onward, alleging pro-Israel bias in coverage, systematic double standards, and frequent violations of journalistic principles. What? At CNN? Stop. Couldn't be. Violations of journalistic standards. Do they have a book of journalistic standards at CNN? Really? Really? In several cases, they accuse senior newsroom figures of failing to hold Israeli officials to account and of interfering in reporting to downplay Israeli atrocities. What? In one instance at CNN, false Israeli propaganda was put on air despite advance warnings from staff members. They use fake names for the whistleblowers because these people are afraid of getting outed. Adam, a journalist at CNN, said before October 7th he trusted the network's journalistic practices. That's sad to be. Can you imagine being that naive as of 1 year ago? But after October 7th, the ease with which I saw news lines that supported the Israeli narrative coming out really shook me. There were times where CNN was happy to push hard, but on balance, it's very clear where we lie, regrettably. And it's not entirely with the truth. And here's the thing, is because these people are still working inside these networks, I think most of them, or they're maybe working with another mainstream network, but either way, even though they're whistleblowers, they're still kind of soft. Like, I would call CNN a pro-genocide, war manufacturing consent garbage machine. Like, that's how I would call it. They say, this is not always with the truth. Their allegiance doesn't always lie with the truth. So, you know, we say it different ways, but there's some similarities. In November, CNN International diplomatic editor Nick Robertson. So Nick Robertson is, you probably know him. He's been on CNN for ages, and he's always in the war zone, and he's always putting forward absolute U.S. imperial talking points, no matter what the event is, no matter what's going down. He's always embedded with a Marine, and he's like, these people are doing the Lord's work, or whatever. It's just always pro-imperial shit show. Embedded with the Israeli army. Who do you think the Israeli army would allow to come with them to view what's actually going on? Oh, the journalists that they know are going to spit absolute Israeli propaganda. So he came with the Israeli army to visit Gaza's bombed out Al-Rantisi Children's Hospital. That's right, Israel bombed the living hell out of a children's hospital. Once inside, the military spokesperson, Daniel Hagari, you guys probably remember this moment. It was just, honestly, it could be on an SNL sketch if SNL wasn't also manufacturing consent for war, but it could be on an SNL sketch if it weren't so serious. But they go into underneath the hospital, bombed out hospital, and they show proof that Hamas was using the hospital to hide Israeli captives. And Hagari and Robertson look at a document on the wall that's written in Arabic. And the Israeli troop says, this is a guarding list. Every terrorist has their own shift to guard the captives. So basically, hostages were held underneath this hospital. And as Adam at CNN says, it wasn't a Hamas roster at all. It was a calendar, and it was written in Arabic. Basically, the days of the week were written in Arabic. But the report that came out from Nick Robertson just swallowed the Israelis' claim. The Israeli claim had actually been debunked prior to the video coming out. Like, before they ever showed it, there was other staff and others, and it had been posted on social media, and many, including a Palestinian producer, alerted her colleagues, including Robertson, that this was just a calendar. And it was ignored. After the report aired on television, another producer tried to get it corrected before it was posted online. One colleague saw the report and flagged it to Nick, saying, hold on, people are saying this is not accurate. And Nick said, are you meaning to say that Hagari is lying to us? Yeah, that's what they do. There was a chance for this to get stopped, but Nick was adamant and it went out. He's a very experienced correspondent. He's very experienced in lying. That's what he's very experienced with. No proof ever emerged of captives being held at Al-Rantisi Hospital. Adam also said there was a period of time when CNN journalists couldn't call airstrikes in Gaza airstrikes unless they had confirmation from Israel. There is no other country where that's the case. And there's a quote from this CNN employee. We would not be doing this in any other country. We would not tolerate the need to ask, say, the Russians whether they bombed a hospital. Yeah. If you're reporting on something, you don't ask the country what they want you to believe happened there. That's not reporting. That's not journalism. That is absolute propaganda. It's just absolute garbage. And yet that's what CNN does. They make sure things are approved by Israel. When health officials in Gaza announced that Israeli attacks had killed more than 40,000 people, CNN managing editor Mike McCarthy ordered his team to contextualize and hold Hamas accountable. Hold Hamas accountable for Israel's genocide. You got that? And that's coming from their top editor. So they know they're going to be fired if they ignore that. So you have whole teams of people, everybody. And look, because I was at RT America doing a comedy show, I worked at one of the smallest news studios for a national and international news show that ever existed, or recently. And, there were 20 people in the control room. There were 5 people working on graphics all the time. There's sound people, producers. All of those people have to just go along with this and agree, oh, yeah, we're going to blame this genocide on the people being genocided. That makes sense. I don't mean RT America did that. I mean the other networks. Informing viewers of the grim milestone in August, CNN presenter Becky Anderson said in the news show, the Gaza Health Ministry says more than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed since October 7th. Have been killed by who? It's a mystery. She says, since the October 7th Hamas massacre. Oh, what Hamas did was a massacre. What Israel's doing is a special security procedure. So yeah, they're told to, okay, you can use the number 40,000 as long as you pretend it's Hamas's fault. Sarah, not her real name, a former BBC journalist, accused the British broadcaster of a double standard in interviewing guests. She told Al Jazeera that she no longer saw her future at the BBC in part because of a sort of unwillingness among the executive to address concerns about editorial bias. Here's what's going on here, and I assume you guys kind of get this, but these are the underlings. I mean, some of them they could be on regular on-camera reporters, but these are the underlings, not the managerial class at these news stations, still not understanding what these news stations are, what they really are when push comes to shove. And who knows, some of them might have been there a year, but I bet some of them have been there 10 years, and they still don't understand, or maybe this is waking them up, that these are propaganda outlets. Their whole purpose, and they may have a bunch of reports and everything that's good stuff that doesn't really impact the U.S. imperial aims. So, like, let's say CNN does a report on chemicals in a city or East Palestine or something like that, and you go, well, there's some good reporting. Well, because that doesn't really impact the U.S. imperial aims. On the things that do impact U.S. imperial aims, and when I say U.S., I mean Israel as well, on the things that actually impact that, these are nothing but a propaganda outlet. And these underlings, again, they could be reporters, but they're not running the show, don't know that's what this is. And the same thing actually happened internally at USAID, right? Which is a CIA cutout that now helps foment coups around the world. But they also send aid. They send aid to countries in order to use that as a tool to create coups when they need to. But the underlings don't understand they're working at I don't mean all of them, but a good percentage, don't understand they're working at a CIA cutout that creates coups around the world. They think they're sending aid. And so you have the non-managerial class, some of them starting to wake up, starting to see, boy, this news seems a little biased. It seems like we have on a certain kind of Israeli guest where we never question a word they say, and then we rarely have on a Palestinian guest and we attack them for everything they say. That doesn't seem fair. And it's interesting to see some of them wake up. But I know for many of you who've been maybe following this stuff, maybe following my show and others for a long time, you're kind of going, how dumb are they? Well, they're working in mainstream media, meaning they had to be at least dumb enough. I don't want to use the word dumb, but unaware enough, naive enough to think these networks do real journalism. She said there was editorial bias at BBC. In the days after October 7th, the BBC set up an internal chat group for producers so they could screen potential interviewees based on their social media footprint. Al Jazeera has obtained some of those chats. Quote, it was overwhelmingly guests on the Palestinian side of things who were being looked into. Palestinians were being flagged for using the word Zionist, which isn't something to flag necessarily. No, the word Zionist has an actual meaning. It means those who support a ethno-state supremacist apartheid nation called Israel. And there are Jewish Zionists and there are non-Jewish Zionists. And in fact, there are more Christian Zionists in the United States than Jews in the world. And in fact, the people running our government, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, are non-Jewish Zionists. So if you think the word Zionist just means Jewish, then you've fallen for some of Israel's propaganda. There was no balance in what was going on. Israeli spokespeople, who we did have on, were given a lot of free rein to say whatever they wanted. Israeli politician Aiden Roll on October 17th told BBC presenter that babies were set on fire, quote, and babies were shot in the head, quote, during the Hamas incursion into southern Israel. Claims that Israel has not proved and Hamas rejects. And what Al Jazeera is leaving out here is we also know exactly how many babies died on October 7th. One was an infant who was killed in the crossfire. Another was a fetus that they tried to save and was not savable. Those are the two children under, 1 or 2 years old that died on October 7th. And that is it. So all of these other things are false. Utterly false. So here is a clip of these whistleblowers, well, just one of the whistleblowers.
Israel has a right to itself. That was the editorial line that was drilled into us, into all of our coverage. It was really an integral part of the editorial stance. To a guest talking about, Israeli airstrikes killing Palestinians in Gaza, that would be the response from our presenters.
Denying access to food is collective punishment, and that we should all be clear in saying that.
Israel will argue, obviously, that it has a right to defend itself.
People were terrified of using the word genocide, and they still are. You will very rarely see it in any BBC coverage. And if an interviewee says the word genocide,
this is a genocide happening in front of our eyes.
That word is, as you know, incredibly emotive, and the Israelis, as you know, will be saying that they are targeting Hamas only.
Anytime the word genocide is used, the BBC presenter has to jump in mid-sentence and add in some kind of equivocation to say, oh, we can't use that word or whatever. It's really ridiculous. It's absolutely a genocide. It's a dictionary definition of genocide. Go to Holocaust Memorial Fund's website and read the definition of genocide if they haven't taken it down, because they don't want people to realize that every bit of it applies to Israel.
Centre will almost always pay.
The Labour Party, of all political parties, which has always had a strong peace contingent within it, is now actually supporting genocide.
Okay, we could maybe just avoid that language if that's okay.
Is there anything else that's not a curse word or like graphic details of naughty body parts? Is there anything else where the BBC reporter jumps in and says, could you not talk like that? I mean, there really isn't, because that's not their job. Their job is not to tell someone how to talk. It is bizarre. Outside of a curse word, there is nothing where they mid-sentence. Well, I just believe that if you look at what's going on the ground there, it's a